Welcome back. Today we're going to look at Psalms 13. The psalm is divided into three sections. Number 1, the problem. Number 2, the petition. And number 3, the praise. Let's look at the problem found in verse 1 and 2. Here it seems that David is crying out to God in anguish and asking all these questions, and he's not getting any answers. It seems as if God had forgotten David and was hiding from him. It always seems as if time lasts forever during a difficult situation, doesn't it? The hard thing about waiting is that you have to wait. Some of us just don't like to wait. Sometimes it seems as if God moves so slowly. We live in a day that says, hurry, hurry, hurry. But so often God says, wait, wait, wait. Have you ever noticed the difference between God's timetable and ours? We think in terms of minutes, hours, and days, but God works in terms of years. For example, Joseph. Did he become second in command of all Egypt overnight? No, it took years. That's what David was going through. He had been anointed as king by the prophet Samuel when he was a teenager. But Saul was pursuing him for a while, and David was perhaps now in his late 20s. This had been going on for years. Where was God? Had he forgotten about David? Perhaps you can relate. When God seems distant, it always affects our emotions. David had gone from hope to despair so many times that he felt like he was on an emotional roller coaster. He was like a rat in a maze with no exit. God had dropped him in and walked away. In the midst of your trial, you can call out to God, but he doesn't answer. You try to figure out how to get out of your circumstances, but nothing works. You go from the heights of hope to the depths of despair so many times that your stomach can't take it much more. But remember this, when God seems distant, we must call to him and trust in his unfailing love. Part 2, this is the second section, the petition, found on verse 3 and 4. When God seems distant from us, instead of calling out to him, we tend to just shrug our shoulders saying, oh well, and go back and try to figure it out on our own. Well, David didn't do that. When God seemed distant, he called on him to answer him. Instead of turning from God, he turned to him. Instead of complaining to man about God, God complained to God about men. David wasn't just praying for deliverance so that he could escape from his problems and be happy. His fear was that the enemy would rejoice. That's found in verse 4. Since David was God's anointing king, if he died at the hands of the enemies, it would make God look bad. God's honor was tied up with David's deliverance. If you profess, as David did, to trust in God alone, then your defeat becomes God's defeat. To defend his own honor, God will defend you. So in a time of crisis, you can call out to God to rescue you, not just for your relief, but for God's glory. God delights to honor such prayers. And finally, the third section, the praise, found in verse 5 and 6. David has not yet been delivered, but he trusts in the loving kindness of God, and a calm assurance comes over him. His heart is filled with joy as he thinks of the deliverance which God will bring about. By faith, David counts God's future deliverance as past and says, I will sing to the Lord because he has dealt bountifully with me. That's found in verse 6. Please note that David's circumstances had not changed one bit from the start of the psalm when he felt confused, depressed, and forsaken by God. David was still hiding in caves. Saul was still on the throne, trying to kill David. So what changed? David's focus. From focusing on himself and his problems at the start of the psalm, David shifted his thoughts to God's loyal love and salvation. That shift in focus moved him from confusion and depression to joy and praise. As David wrote in Psalms 103, verse 11, As high as the heavens are above the earth, so great in his loving kindness toward those who fear him. You can count on it, even when your circumstances seem contrary. He is only taking you through the difficulty to develop maturity and godly character. But it's been months, years. Yes, that's the way he works. He builds things to last, and that takes time. But the finished product is so much better in quality than quick imitations that don't develop trust in the living God. May God bless you.
Thanks for joining us today. We hope what you heard and what you saw was a blessing to you. For our challenge, I encourage you to think of 5 things that you're grateful for. And I encourage you, if you can, throughout this time to keep a thankful journal, writing each day the 5 things that you're thankful and grateful for. After you've written them down, whether on a journal, on your phone, maybe in a piece of paper somewhere, on a notebook, I encourage you to share those 5 things with someone, whether it be your spouse, your family, your kids, your neighbor, your coworker, on your social media posts, and say, hey, these are the 5 things I'm grateful for today. And after you do that, I want you to pray about those 5 things, and throughout the day, thank God for those 5 things. At the same time, we're also doing a challenge of being complaint-free for the next 30 days. If you have a wristband as the ones that we've provided for complaint-free, or maybe just a watch that you wear, and if at any point throughout the day you think of a negative thought or you have a complaint and are ungrateful, what you need to do is switch that band or that watch from one hand to the other. So let's say I have a negative thought. I'm switching the band on my right hand to my left hand. And so now every time I look down and I feel something's missing, I realize that, hey, it's on my other hand because I had a negative thought. Hopefully together, in these 30 days, we can learn to train our minds to not think negatively and to be grateful for all that God has done together.